The pizza delivery. He finished counting the change, his eyes still lingering on me for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. I took the change, the metallic clink in my palm a stark contrast to the unsettling silence that followed. Then, with a decisive click, I closed the door, shutting out the encroaching shadows and the lingering question that hung in the air. The aroma of hot pizza filled the kitchen, a temporary balm against the lingering prickle of the delivery man's question. I ate quickly, probably 3 slices as planned, then diligently wrapped the remaining ones in foil and tucked them into the fridge. Upstairs, the glowing screen of my PlayStation 2 called to me. Agent Under Fire was less compelling than its predecessor, a slightly different flavor of espionage, but it served its purpose, drawing me back into a world of digital danger, a welcome distraction from the subtle anxiety that had taken root. Hours blurred into the night, a tapestry woven with the clicks of controllers and the muted sounds of fictional gunfire. The digital clock on the console probably read something around 11 p.m. when it happened again. The doorbell. A jolt of excitement, a surge of relief. My parents! They must be home. Mom! Dad! I called out, my voice bright with expectation as I hurried down the stairs, eager to greet them. But the voice that answered through the closed door was not theirs. It was unfamiliar, rough, and laced with an unsettling urgency. "Hey, I need help," it said. My heart hitched. A cold dread began to spread. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I just need to use a phone," the voice insisted, a persistent, unnerving plea. The year I turned 12 felt like a turning point, a fragile bridge between childhood freedom and the first tremors of independence. It was the year my parents finally deemed me old enough, responsible enough, to be left in the quiet solitude of our home. We lived in a town that hummed with a sleepy, almost nostalgic peace. Streets that whispered with the breeze, not the hurried rush of traffic. Yards that stretched out like emerald carpets, inviting bare feet and lazy afternoons. A charming village center, dotted with the kind of shops and eateries that felt more like extensions of our homes than mere businesses. This wasn't a place where shadows held menace, or where a solitary walk under the stars demanded a glance over your shoulder. It was, in every sense, a haven. And perhaps that very safety lent my parents the confidence to entrust me with such a profound solitude at a tender age. Even now, years later, I still sleep under the same roof, in the same house, a testament to the enduring comfort of that familiar space. The night in question was a weekend, a canvas painted with the promise of youthful abandon. My parents were venturing out, leaving me to my own devices for the entire evening. In earlier years, my older sister and I would have been whisked away to my grandparents' house, a bustling sanctuary filled with laughter and the scent of baking. But my sister was elsewhere that night, and I, teetering on the edge of adolescence, was deemed sufficiently mature for solo command. My parents, having started their family young, possessed an enviable zest for life, often embarking on weekend excursions or social evenings with friends. On this particular night, their parting gift was a crisp $20 bill and the sacred permission to order pizza. For a 12 or 13-year-old, it was the ultimate decree of freedom, an empty house, an endless night of video games, and a piping hot pizza, all for me. My childhood was punctuated by the thrilling clandestine missions of James Bond. My PlayStation 2 was practically an extension of my own espionage dreams, and I was deep into my third playthrough of Nightfire, a world of exotic locales and suave danger. Hours melted away like ice on a summer day, the hum of the console a comforting drone in the quiet house. When the final credits rolled, signaling another successful mission, my stomach rumbled its own urgent directive: pizza time. Our local haunt was Gianni's Pizzeria, a beloved institution nestled just 3 blocks away.
Though its doors have long since closed, its memory lingers like the ghost of oregano and melting cheese. It was our family's undisputed go-to. I dialed the familiar number, the rhythmic whir of the phone a prelude to the cheesy indulgence to come, and ordered a classic, plain pie. At 12, my capacity for pizza was legendary. 3 slices were merely an appetizer. My mother, ever practical, had left strict instructions. Wrap the inevitable leftovers in tinfoil and consign them to the cold embrace of the refrigerator. While I waited, I swapped out Nightfire for another Bond adventure, Agent Underfire. It wasn't quite the same thrill, a subtle shift in the adrenaline, but still a worthy successor. The minutes ticked by, each one stretching with the anticipation of hot cheese and crispy crust. Then, the chime, a sudden insistent trill that echoed through the quiet house. The doorbell. I vaulted down the stairs, the $20 bill clutched in my hand like a precious artifact. My mother's final instruction regarding the transaction echoed in my ears. Tip $4. Considering the pizzeria was only 3 blocks away, it was a more than generous offering, especially for the time. Through the frosted glass of the door, a shadowy figure emerged. When I opened it, I was met by a man who looked to be in his 30s, though a certain weariness etched itself onto his features. A long, unkempt beard, almost wild, framed his face. He wore glasses that seemed to magnify the intensity of his gaze, and a black trucker's hat, pulled low, partially obscured his eyes. I handed him the 20, asking for the precise change. As he gave me the pizza box, its warmth radiating through the cardboard, and began to count out the bills and coins, his eyes flickered up, meeting mine. Then slowly, deliberately, they drifted past me, sweeping over the dimly lit foyer, piercing the very sanctuary of my home. "You alone here?" he asked. An electric current of unease shot through me. My parents had drilled into me the sacred rules of stranger danger, the subtle cues of caution. This question, so casual yet so unnerving, felt like a violation. In a surge of misguided self-preservation, I blurted out, "My parents are on their way home." A foolish answer, I realized later, hindsight a cruel tutor. I could have simply said no. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, why he had asked. The driveway was empty, a glaring testament to my solitude, and it was a child, not an adult, who stood at the threshold, accepting the delivery.
A primal instinct screamed at me not to look, not to expose myself. Peeking through the small window beside the door felt like an invitation to danger. Fear, raw and immediate, seized me. Common sense, a quiet guardian my parents had instilled, rose to the forefront. Opening that door, I knew with every fiber of my being, would be a catastrophic mistake. I turned away, deciding to retreat, to ascend the stairs, and simply ignore the insistent presence on our porch. As I began my ascent, the stairs directly in front of the main door, a sudden jarring bang erupted from outside, rattling the very frame of the house. The man's voice, now sharper, more desperate, pierced the silence. "Wait, please! I need help!" My blood ran cold. He had seen me. He was watching. My gaze shot upwards to the small decorative glass panel at the very top of the front door. Though the porch light cast it in deep shadow, I could distinctly make out the dark silhouette of his head pressed against the glass. I couldn't discern his eyes, but I knew he was staring back, his unseen gaze boring into mine. Panic, a wild, scrambling thing, took hold. I spun around and bolted, my feet pounding a frantic rhythm on the stairs. My destination? My parents' bedroom. It was the only place upstairs with a landline, a lifeline to the outside world. I snatched up the receiver, my fingers fumbling, and punched in my mom's cell number. My dad's number, in that moment of terror, was a forgotten string of digits. My mom answered, her voice a little slurred, likely softened by a few glasses of wine shared with friends. "Mom," I whispered, the word thick with suppressed tears, "there's someone at the door. He wants to come in." The effect was instantaneous. The wine-induced haze seemed to evaporate. Her tone shifted dramatically, sharpening with alarm and her voice rising in volume. "What? Who is it?" Have you spoken to him? Did you let him know you were home?" I confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Yes, I told him you were on your way home." The foolishness of my earlier answer now felt like a lead weight in my stomach.
Her concern deepened, a palpable weight through the phone line. "Did anyone know you were home alone tonight?" Her question sparked a memory, a chilling replay of the pizza man's intrusive query. "The pizza guy," I choked out. "He asked if I was alone." As if on cue, the doorbell rang again. 2 more sharp, insistent chimes that echoed through the house, each one a hammer blow against my fragile sense of security. "Mom, he won't leave," I whispered, my voice raw with panic. "Stay put," she commanded, her voice firm, slicing through my fear. "Stay in our room, keep the door locked. We're calling the police." She kept me on the line, her voice a steady anchor, while my dad, on his own phone, relayed the terrifying situation to the emergency services. They had to step outside the restaurant into the night air to ensure a clearer connection. It was a warm summer night, the kind when windows are left slightly ajar, inviting the gentle breeze to wander through the house. And through my parents' open window, a new sound, soft and insidious, infiltrated the quiet. The faint creak of the gate that led to our backyard, opening with a deliberate, almost stealthy gentleness. "Mom," I whispered, the gate's soft groan a fresh wave of terror. "He's in the backyard." "Just stay quiet, honey," she urged, her voice now strained whisper. "Stay in the room, lights off, don't make a sound." My imagination, fueled by fear, conjured the image of him, lurking. "What if he tries getting in through the den window?" I breathed into the phone. "Stop talking, honey," she implored, her voice tight with suppressed panic. "Just wait for the police. They're on their way. ETA is—" She kept me updated from the police, a fragile tether to the world beyond my locked bedroom door, all the while repeating her desperate plea, "Don't talk." A semblance of calm, a fragile thread, was beginning to weave its way through my terror when it happened. The unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing from downstairs. Someone was inside the house, wandering, searching. "Mom," I whispered, the sound barely audible. "He's in the house. I hear footsteps." On the other end of the line, I heard her scream, a guttural cry of terror that must have carried through to the police on the other phone. Something like, "He's inside! Hurry!" "Hide under the bed," she commanded, her voice ragged with fear. "Stay there. Don't move." For my 12-year-old self, this was the apex of horror, a surreal nightmare made flesh. The only thing that offered even a sliver of illusion of protection was the tiny, inadequate lock on my parents' bedroom door. Then, the footsteps began to ascend the stairs. Each thud, heavy and deliberate, echoed not just through the house, but through the very core of my being. Our stairs led past my sister's bedroom, then mine, before reaching my parents' room at the far end of the hall. For a few agonizing moments, the sounds faded, receding into the general murmur of the house. I could only assume he was exploring, methodically searching our bedrooms, the intimate spaces of our lives, for anything of value, or for me. My mom's voice, a strained whisper in my ear, was the only thing grounding me to reality. "The police will force their way in," she instructed. "Don't move, not a muscle. Wait until you hear them inside." Then the footsteps returned. They advanced down the hallway, drawing closer, closer, until they stopped just outside my parents' bedroom door. I heard the distinct click and rasp of the doorknob as someone tried to turn it, pushing down, testing its resistance, only to find it locked. They tried again and again, as if sheer force of will could magically override the simple mechanism. Then a softer sound, a light, insistent knocking, but no voice, no words, just the ominous tap, tap, tap against the wood. One last try at the doorknob, a final frustrated jiggle. Then the footsteps receded. I heard them move back down the hallway, then down the stairs, fading away into the deeper, darker reaches of the house. I was a statue beneath the bed, every muscle tensed, every breath held. I fought back the hot sting of tears, refusing to let them betray my hiding place. I didn't even dare to whisper into the phone, too terrified to make the slightest sound that might carry through the thin walls. Finally, my mom's voice, thick with relief, cut through the silence. "The police are there. They're in the house. But stay put, honey. Don't move yet." I braced myself, expecting the violent crash of a door being kicked in. Instead, I heard a sudden chorus of heavy footsteps, then a man's loud, authoritative voice. "He's shouting my name!"
Footsteps thundered up the stairs, and my mom's voice gave me the all clear, a permission I desperately craved. "You can answer them now. Unlock the door." I scrambled out from under the bed, my legs wobbly, and stumbled to the door, fumbling with the lock. When I opened it, 2 officers stood in the hallway, their faces serious, their presence radiating a comforting authority. 2 more were already downstairs. They hadn't needed to kick down the front door. The back door had been left completely ajar, and the sliding glass window, the obvious entry point, was slid wide open. The next hour was a blur of questions and answers. I sat with the police, recounting every terrifying detail, my voice shaky, my parents listening intently on the phone as they rushed home. I told them about the pizza guy, my suspicion lingering like a bad taste in my mouth. By the time my parents finally burst through the front door, only 2 officers remained, meticulously documenting the scene. The police report included a note about the suspicious delivery driver, and they assured us they would launch an investigation. The following night, my parents, determined to find answers, took me to Gianni's Pizzeria. They wanted me to identify him. The manager, a portly man with flour dusting his apron, listened patiently as my parents explained the harrowing events. When I didn't see the man among the staff, they described him to the manager. "That would be Phil, but he's out on a delivery right now. There's no way it could have been Phil." He looked genuinely offended, then, to our astonishment, asked us to leave.
A scene ensued, as you might imagine. My parents, fueled by anger and fear, made it abundantly clear that Gianni's would never receive our business again. We retreated to the car, parking across the street, determined to wait for Phil. We waited for nearly an hour, the minutes crawling by, but he never appeared. My parents suspected the manager had called or texted him, warning him not to return, but we had no way of knowing for sure. In the weeks that followed, my parents consulted several lawyers. Each one, after hearing our story, ultimately declined to take the case. Lack of solid evidence, they all said, effectively deeming it a waste of time. Ultimately, we never returned to Gianni's, and it was a very long time before my parents felt comfortable leaving me home alone again. The shadow of that night, the fear of that unseen intruder, lingered for years. I still believe, deep down, that it was the pizza guy, or at least someone connected to him. Who else would have known, with such chilling certainty, that a 12-year-old was home alone that night? The question, unanswered, remains, a permanent etching on the memory of a peaceful, ordinary town.
The cabin in the woods. Our home was a fortress, nestled deep within an endless, dense forest. It was a wild, untamed expanse that bled directly into national parkland and the sprawling logging grounds of a paper mill. The house itself was monumental, a 2-story marvel of wood and glass, boasting luxuries like a private gym, a fully stocked bar, a pool room, and, in the cavernous basement, a legitimate movie theater setup. It was the kind of house that haunted dreams, remote, quiet, seemingly perfect. Or so it seemed. At the time, I was navigating the exhilarating, often awkward world of high school romance with my girlfriend. One particular night, with my parents out on a rare date downtown, I seized the opportunity. I invited her over, a clandestine rendezvous for a movie night, the sprawling house ours alone. With the audacity of youth, I cracked open a forbidden beer, underage, but confident in the solitude. We descended into the plush darkness of the movie room, ready to lose ourselves in the epic grandeur of Gladiator. The evening began with the comforting rhythm of normalcy. The film unspooled, filling the massive screen with Roman legions and gladiatorial combat. But somewhere around the midpoint, as the clock edged closer to midnight, an insidious shift occurred within me. Without warning, an overwhelming wave of primal fear, a visceral fight-or-flight sensation washed over me. It was as if my body, a silent sentinel, had detected something my conscious mind couldn't yet grasp. My heart began to pound a frantic drum against my ribs, and my eyes, against my will, kept darting to the large, uncovered windows behind us. They offered a stark, unforgiving view into the absolute blackness of the ancient woods, a vast, unseen world pressing in on our cozy, illuminated sanctuary. I wrestled with the urge to vocalize my unease, to confide in my girlfriend, but I held back, not wanting to shatter the fragile peace of our night. In fact, the movie's drama seemed to ignite a different kind of heat between us, a youthful intimacy that momentarily pushed the unsettling feeling to the periphery. Yet even as our hands intertwined, as the film reached its crescendo, the chilling conviction that we were not alone, that we were being watched, clung to me like a cold shroud. I couldn't pinpoint from where or by whom, but I knew.
When the credits finally rolled, a sense of relief intertwined with lingering dread washed over me. I walked her upstairs, the silence of the vast house amplifying with every step. The front door clicked shut behind her, the purr of her engine fading into the inky blackness as her car drove off. I stood for a moment, enveloped by the sudden, profound quiet. Then I remembered. The lights in the bar, the pool room, and the movie theater, all still blazing, casting their artificial glow into the empty spaces. A sigh escaped me. I turned and headed back downstairs. I started with the movie room, flicking off the light switch, plunging the space into shadow. A brief pause, a moment of stillness, before my eyes were inexorably drawn to the large window that overlooked the backyard. And that's when I saw him. He was a spectral figure, a man who looked utterly lost, utterly broken. Wild, tangled hair framed a face obscured by grime. His clothes, tattered and filthy, hung from his frame. But it wasn't his derelict appearance that froze me to the spot. It was his expression. A grotesque, impossibly wide smile stretched across his face, revealing teeth stained and uneven. His eyes, staring and unnervingly wide, held a terrifying, deranged glint. And in his hand, clutched casually, was a knife. He was gently, rhythmically tapping the blade against the cold glass, a soft, metallic whisper that sliced through the silence. For a disorienting moment, I questioned my sanity. Was this a hallucination, a figment of my overwrought imagination? Slowly, carefully, I began to back away, my gaze locked on the grinning face. I retreated to the barroom, intending to extinguish the remaining lights. This room, too, had a large sliding glass door that offered another panoramic view of the encroaching woods. As my finger found the light switch and flipped it, plunging the bar into darkness, I watched in abject horror. The man, with an unnerving calm, detached himself from the window and began to walk. Slowly, deliberately, still smiling that horrific smile, still staring with those dead, deranged eyes, he moved towards the sliding glass door. Now only the cold, unyielding glass separated us. Less than a foot. His face, illuminated by the distant security lights, was a mask of pure, unsettling joy. He made no move to enter, no attempt to force his way in. He simply stood there, utterly still, and watched me.
I didn't utter a single word. I simply turned and ascended the stairs, each step a desperate escape from the silent, grinning figure in the darkness below. As I reached the top, the front door swung open, and my parents stepped inside, their casual chatter filling the sudden void. Their faces, relaxed from their evening out, shifted as they took in my ashen complexion. "I think I need to go to the psych ward or something," I blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "I swear, I just saw a guy with a knife watching me outside." My mother's face instantly drained of color. My father's eyes, usually warm, narrowed into hard, analytical slits. Without a word, a chilling silence descending between them, he moved with grim purpose to the gun safe. The familiar click of the lock, the heavy thud as he withdrew his rifle, spoke volumes. He then stormed out, disappearing into the night to scour the property. "What's going on, Mom?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Her voice was hushed, urgent. "There have been a few break-ins in the area, honey. A guy wandering through the woods, trying to get into homes. The description you gave, it matches exactly." The police were called, their flashing lights momentarily cutting through the oppressive darkness of the forest. They conducted a thorough search, their heavy boots crunching on the fallen leaves, their flashlights cutting swaths through the gloom. But they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no telltale footprints on the soft earth, just the cold, indifferent blackness of the woods. That, I thought, should have been the end of it, a terrifying, isolated incident. But it wasn't. That night, as I lay in bed, trying desperately to coax sleep, a new sound began to permeate the silence beneath me. A faint, rhythmic tapping. My bedroom was on the second floor, directly above the movie room, and the sound seemed to emanate from precisely there. It was metallic, gentle, like a blade softly striking glass, over and over again. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to be nothing. The house settling, a branch brushing the window, anything but him. But the tapping persisted, lasting for hours, a tormenting lullaby. This became my new, horrifying normal. Night after night for weeks on end, the tapping returned. Sometimes it would cease for a while, granting a brief, fragile reprieve. Other times, I'd jolt awake at 3 a.m., the unholy hour, and hear it faintly, supplely, pulling me back into the nightmare. One night, I even thought I heard the soft thud of footsteps on the roof directly above me. I checked the windows, peered out into the impenetrable darkness, but I never saw anyone. Yet the insidious feeling that I was being stalked, watched, relentlessly pursued never left me. It burrowed deep, eroding my sense of safety, transforming my sanctuary into a cage. Then winter arrived, bringing with it a blanket of pristine, revealing snow. My parents had to leave town for a few days, a business trip, but their usual carefree departure was replaced with palpable unease. The incident still weighed heavily on them. Before they left, in a gesture that was both reassuring and terrifying, my father placed a loaded shotgun into my hands, whispering, "Just in case." We also had a magnificent Rottweiler, a gentle giant with a heart of gold. He was the sweetest, most docile dog you could ever meet, and utterly silent unless something truly warranted his attention, unless real danger lurked.
One night, alone again in the massive, creaking house, I heard it. Slow, deliberate, crunching footsteps in the freshly fallen snow outside. Heavy, unmistakable. The dog, usually a picture of canine serenity, instantly tensed. His ears, typically flopped, perked rigid, swiveling towards the front door. A low, deep growl rumbled in his chest, a sound I rarely, if ever, heard. Then it erupted. Ferocious, loud, relentless barking, a primal warning that reverberated through the house. He only barked like that when he saw something, when the threat was real, tangible. I froze. I didn't want whoever was out there to know I was alone, to know why the dog was barking with such fury. I stayed silent, unmoving, a statue of terror. Then came the knock. Knock! 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 I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night, sleep was a distant luxury. I laid in bed, the shotgun cradled beside me, the door locked, the blinds drawn tight against the unseen world outside. My loyal Rottweiler, a furry sentinel, slept at my feet, his presence the only comfort against the gnawing fear.
The next morning, the lingering chill of fear still clung to me. I ventured outside, my heart pounding with a grim premonition, and what I saw made my stomach drop into a bottomless pit. Footprints. Fresh, unmistakable human footprints circled the entire house. They were clear, precise, and they stopped at every single window, as if someone had paused, peering in, meticulously searching each room. Searching for me. I followed the eerie trail around the property, each step a further descent into dread, until they eventually led into the dense, silent forest. I pushed on, compelled by a morbid curiosity, following the prints for perhaps half a mile. Then they changed. They began to zigzag wildly, veering off into inexplicable loops, doubling back on themselves, a deliberate, twisted attempt to throw me off their trail. A cold, hard voice of instinct screamed at me to stop, to go no further. Something told me that to continue would be a terrible, perhaps fatal mistake. I turned back, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. That night, the tapping returned, but this time it was louder, more insistent, a sharp, metallic clink against glass that vibrated through the floorboards, through my very bones. I knew it was him. A surge of adrenaline, cold and fierce, washed over my fear. I unlocked my bedroom door, grabbed the shotgun, its cold metal, a sudden comfort in my hands, and stepped out onto the second-story deck. I flipped the switch for the powerful fog lights that illuminated the backyard, cutting through the oppressive darkness with a harsh, artificial glow. And there he was.
Same man, same grotesque wide smile stretched unnaturally across his face. Same dead, staring eyes that seemed to bore right through me. He was holding the knife again, its blade catching the harsh light. He stood utterly still, staring directly at me as if he could see not just my form, but the raw terror coursing through my veins. I raised the shotgun, its weight solid and reassuring in my hands. "If you don't leave," I shouted, my voice cracking slightly, but firm with a desperate resolve, "I'll put one right through you." He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, unblinking, that terrifying grin plastered on his face, his eyes fixed on mine. He was a statue of pure, malevolent stillness. Desperation clawed at me. I fired a warning shot into the air, the roar of the gun ripping through the quiet night, a deafening thunderclap that shattered the silence. Finally, a reaction. He staggered, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor, then slowly, deliberately, began to back away, disappearing into the black maw of the woods. But even as he retreated, he kept his face turned towards me, that monstrous smile never faltering, those dead eyes never leaving mine. That was the moment I made my decision. I sprinted downstairs, threw open the sliding glass door, and unleashed the dog. He bolted into the forest like a black missile, a blur of muscle and fury, barking and snarling with a ferocity I had never witnessed before. He was a creature transformed, a guardian demon released. He had a shock collar, so he couldn't venture too far, but I like to believe, I need to believe, that he chased that man off for good. Because after that night, that terrifying, life-altering night, I never saw him again.
The Stalker in the Forest. It was March 2022, spring break of my second year of college, a time meant to shed the weight of academia and embrace unrestrained freedom. 6 of us, Matt, Chris, Tyler, Jess, Sarah, and I, a tight-knit group since freshman year, decided on a pilgrimage, a rented cabin deep in the heart of South Carolina. Our collective aim was simple: escape. Escape from school, from stress, from the relentless digital hum of our phones. We envisioned a classic college getaway. Too much cheap beer, music cranked to deafening levels, and the kind of hazy, unforgettable memories that would fuel laughter for years to come. The cabin we found seemed almost too good to be true, suspiciously cheap for its impressive size. A 2-story structure boasting a sprawling wraparound porch, 2 bathrooms, and the alluring promise of private land bordering a serene lake. Its remoteness was both its charm and, as we would soon discover, its most terrifying feature. No towns for miles, just an unbroken expanse of ancient forest swallowing the cabin whole. The owner, when we finally reached him by phone, possessed a voice as thick and gnarled as the trees that surrounded his property. His accent was a dense, rural drawl, and his demeanor struck us as off. His only instruction, delivered with an unsettling gravity, was a warning. "Just don't go wandering too deep into the woods. Some old stuff back there. Whales, busted fences, snakes. You don't want to get turned around." We laughed, brushing it off as an attempt to imbue our trip with some spooky southern folklore, a quaint eccentricity. We couldn't have been more wrong. The drive itself was an odyssey. GPS signals flickered and died an hour before our destination, leaving us to navigate by instinct and dwindling daylight. The final stretch of road devolved into a treacherous ribbon of dirt and gravel, barely wide enough for a single car, hemmed in by the ever-thickening forest. The trees pressed in, their ancient limbs forming a suffocating canopy, blocking out the sky. When the cabin finally emerged from the gloom, we all fell silent. It was a stark, unsettling contrast to the idyllic photos online, older, grittier, a forgotten relic. The windows were caked with dust, like cataracts obscuring hidden eyes, and several shutters hung precariously, clinging to their hinges by frayed threads. A faint cloying smell hung in the air, a disturbing cocktail of old garbage and damp, decaying wood. We tried to laugh it off, making hollow jokes about character, but the unease had already begun to set in.
We unloaded our gear, quickly claiming rooms, and by 7 p.m., the first beers were cracked open. The initial hours of that first night were an attempt at forced normalcy. We grilled burgers on the porch, the sizzling meat a defiant sound against the encroaching silence. Music blared from a Bluetooth speaker, our youthful anthems echoing into the darkening woods, and card games filled the rustic living room with shouts and laughter. By 11 p.m., as the night grew colder, we retreated indoors, seeking the warmth of the cabin. That's when I truly noticed the woods. Not just nighttime dark, but an absolute, suffocating blackness. The porch lights, feeble beacons, barely pushed back the gloom more than a few feet, and the trees were so densely packed, so ancient, they felt less like a boundary and more like a solid, living wall pressing in from all sides. No chirping crickets, no rustling leaves, no whispers of wind, just a heavy, profound silence that felt unnatural, menacing. We finally crashed around 2 a.m., the alcohol-induced haze a welcome numbing agent. I had chosen one of the ground floor rooms, a small, Spartan space directly adjacent to the kitchen, containing little more than a bed and a single window facing the impenetrable woods. At precisely 4:15 a.m., I woke up. Not gradually, not with the gentle stir of a dream, but abruptly, completely, as if a switch had been flipped or an unseen hand had poked me awake. I lay there, my heart thudding with an inexplicable urgency, listening. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. My groggy mind tried to rationalize it. The heater, perhaps. But then it came again. Steady. Non-metallic. Non-mechanical. It sounded, unmistakably, like fingers gently tapping on glass. My eyes snapped open, darting to the window, and there he was. A man, pressed flat against the glass, his face almost touching it, a grotesque distortion peering into my room. His skin was unnervingly pale, almost translucent in the faint ambient light. Wild, unkempt hair framed his gaunt features. He wore no shirt, his bare torso pressed against the pane. His mouth hung slightly open, a silent gasp, as if he were struggling to breathe. His eyes were wide, unnervingly still, fixed on me with an intensity that pierced through the darkness. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He simply stood there, an unholy sentinel. Tapping, slowly,
on the glass, a rhythmic, teasing sound that spoke of calculated menace. My body locked up, a statue of pure, unadulterated terror. Then the tapping grew a little faster.
My voice, when it finally emerged, was a strangled whisper. "Matt!" I breathed, barely audible, calling out to my friend, who lay sprawled on the couch just outside my room. No response. "Matt!" I tried again, louder this time, a desperate plea tearing at my throat. He stirred, groggy and disoriented. "What do you want?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. I didn't answer with words. I simply pointed, my arm trembling, towards the window. He looked over, his eyes still heavy-lidded, then snapped wide open. The sight of the man pressed against the glass jolted him awake with brutal force. With a choked cry, he sprang up, sending the coffee table skittering across the floor with a crash. The sudden commotion must have startled the figure outside. By the time Matt had scrambled to the porch light switch and flicked it on, then burst outside, the man was gone, swallowed once more by the impenetrable darkness of the forest. The noise, the shouts, the sheer terror had woken everyone. The girls, Jess and Sarah, were visibly shaken, their faces pale with fear. Tyler, ever the pragmatist, tried to rationalize it away, suggesting it was just some drunk local trying to prank us. Chris, ever the hunter, theorized it might be a lost woodsman, disoriented in the pitch black. But I knew with a chilling certainty that settled deep in my bones. It was that guy, and he wasn't lost. He was watching us. A frantic, unspoken understanding passed between us. We blocked the doors with whatever furniture we could muster, shoved the heavy couch in front of the large living room window, and began to take turns standing guard, each shift stretching for hours in the agonizing silence. Nothing else happened that night, but the quiet was now a threat, a waiting game.
The next morning, stepping outside felt like entering a crime scene. There they were. Footprints, bare human footprints, starkly visible in the damp earth circling the entire cabin. They stopped at every single window, every single pane of glass, even the small high-up window above the upstairs shower. It was a methodical, intimate violation, a terrifying survey of our every vulnerability. That should have been it. We should have left then, packed our bags in a panic and fled that cursed place. But we were young, foolish, and stubbornly determined to reclaim our fun spring break. So we stayed. Night 2 began with the familiar rituals, drinks, music, a roaring fire pit, but the energy was irrevocably changed. The carefree laughter of the previous night was replaced by nervous glances towards the oppressive darkness of the woods. Jess, usually a social drinker, abstained completely, her eyes darting nervously. Chris, normally relaxed, kept his hunting knife conspicuously sheathed on his belt, a silent promise of defense. When we finally retreated indoors, the usual casual locking of doors became a meticulous ritual. Every window was latched, double-checked, every door was bolted, reinforced with a desperate hope that it would be enough. Around 3:30 a.m., the cabin's fragile peace shattered again. Matt, venturing into the kitchen for a glass of water, stopped dead in the hallway. He called my name, his voice a strained whisper, imbued with the fresh, bone-chilling terror. I got up, my heart leaping into my throat, and saw him standing there, his arm extended, his finger pointing not at a window, but into the kitchen. Someone was in the kitchen. It was the man from before, but this time he was inside. He was naked, his back to us, covered in long, raw-looking scratches that crisscrossed his pale skin like angry red rivers. He stood utterly still in front of the refrigerator, staring at it with a blank, uncomprehending gaze as if it were an alien artifact. He made a slow, almost hypnotic swaying motion,
rocking gently on the balls of his feet like a pendulum. Matt didn't speak. He simply backed away, slowly, carefully, his eyes glued to the horrifying figure.
We all gathered silently at the hallway entrance, a huddle of terrified college kids. I fumbled for the small pocket knife I carried. Sarah, her face pale, clutched the heavy iron fire poker. Chris, ever resourceful, snatched one of the chair legs he'd snapped earlier in a drunken jest. Now it was a crude but formidable weapon. With a collective breath, one of us reached out and flipped the kitchen light switch. The man was gone. The back door, however, stood wide open. It wasn't broken. It wasn't forced. It was just open. 20 minutes later, we were gone. No one argued. No one debated. The fun, the stubborn defiance, the fleeting sense of security all evaporated into the cold pre-dawn air. We packed only the bare essentials: wallets, keys, phones. Then we piled into the cars, driving frantically through the winding dark roads of the forest until our phones finally registered a signal, allowing us to call the sheriff. We met the deputy at a dingy diner off the highway, the harsh fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the shadowy cabin we had just fled. He didn't look surprised, not in the slightest. He asked if anyone was hurt. Then, with a weary, we've had some trouble with folks squatting up in those woods, not always right in the head. We tried to explain, to convey the sheer calculated terror of it all. This wasn't just some homeless guy. This man watched us, came back 2 nights in a row, and somehow, impossibly, got inside. The deputy just nodded, as if he'd heard this exact story countless times before. When we mentioned the cabin owner, a flicker of recognition, almost a knowing smirk, crossed his face. It implied he knew the guy, knew more than he was letting on. The cabin listing vanished a few days later, completely wiped from every rental site. We never got answers, never got a follow-up call. We didn't even get our deposit back. But that face, the way he looked at me through that window, those unblinking eyes, that deranged smile, I still see it sometimes, when I wake up in the dead of night. We don't talk about that trip much anymore. It's an unspoken pact, a shared trauma. But as far as I know, none of us have been back to South Carolina since.